What's up, guys? Big Mike here, Engineers for Communities live show. I'm super excited today to go over I&I. Let's get into it. All right, so how does I&I impact your wastewater collection system and your wastewater treatment plant? Okay, so what is I&I? I&I stands for Infiltration and Inflow. Here you can see a picture of water coming into this big pipe and actually coming from outside the pipe into it. All right, so where does it come from? Here I've got a good picture that demonstrates a lot of things. So a big inflow infiltrator is stormwater pipes. This can come in sort of cross connections, illegal connections. You can see here like you've got a roof drain connection, foundation connection. You got breaks in the line, so water seeping through the ground into the pipe, roots busting the pipe up. You could have a manhole lid that isn't sealed all the way. You can have different, right here, you can have cracks or seals that aren't good in the manhole. And yeah, here's another image here of cross connection. Okay, so why should you care about it? Here on the right, there's just tons of water here coming into the pipe. Why do we care that this is happening? Well, one, you're gonna have more operational costs at your wastewater treatment plant. So now we're treating additional stormwater and things that you don't have to treat. It's signs of a bigger issue in your collection system. So it means that you may be setting yourself up for a larger failure down the road. You might have big clogs or something that you haven't really investigated into. And then on top of it, I'll share here on the next slide, but you may be going and upgrading your wastewater treatment plant way sooner than you need to. Okay, so here is the Texas Administrative Code. This is one of their rules and regulations strictly talking about wastewater discharge. So when your sewage treatment plant, it gets built, it has a max capacity it's permitted for, typically around either average daily or annual flow. And in this case, once you hit that 75% of your permitted value, you've got, for 3 months, you've got to start planning and doing the planning for an expansion. That's super costly. And even worse, if you get to 90% for 3 consecutive months, they're expecting you to be starting construction of that facility. So you could pause the video here, read through this entire code if you need more, but I'm sure that this is similar in other states. This isn't just a Texas thing. I'm sure this is applicable in other states as well. Okay, so how do I quantify it here? EA has a lovely tool. It's this PCS-ICIS search. You can look up any facility in here. Here's the URL link if you want to go to it, and you can look up your facility. What I suggest doing is instead of beginning with, using containing and like typing your city name or the name of the district or group that treats the water to help more quickly find it, because it's a little weird the way that they put them in that system. Okay, so here's the facility detail report. This is City of Milford, Texas. This is kind of what pops up when you search them and you click on their ID. Something you want to go to right here, I put an arrow. You want to go to this National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. You want to click on their number right here. It'll take you to the next slide. Okay, so you'll get to this thing here that shows tons of detailed information. You'll scroll down to this portion of the web page and you'll want to click on flow in conduit or through treatment plant, and you'll notice right there next to it, it says effluent gross monthly. So it'll tell you how much they're discharging daily each month. There'll be a point how much they average for each day throughout that month. So you'll want to click on that and it'll take you to a more detailed list. Okay, so you'll end up on this effluence chart here. You can see here, there's their permit number that's directly related to Milford. There's their name. What you'll want to do is go back 5 years. So you can go from today's date. So today is June 15th. You can go back 5 years from today's date, and you'll want to go ahead and specify that date range there so that you can get to the next chart. So this is the chart that ends up getting populated on their website. It doesn't quite scale well when you have these blips on the radar, so you can't really see trend lines. So what I suggest doing, and so that you can break the data down more, is clicking download data. And I would specify to get it in an Excel spreadsheet so that we can create a graphic along with it. Okay, so once you've exported that data to an Excel document and you've opened it up in Excel, you can create this table. Some interesting things to note is on the left side here, I've got the average gallons per day that came straight out of it. On the x-axis, the bottom here, the horizontal grid, We've got the dates over time going back all the way to 2018. So you'll notice I made these green and orange lines. The orange line represents the 100% their permitted limit. You can go look up their permit and see what that number is. And then the green line represents the 75% mark. And that's that kind of, in Texas, that's that where you got to start planning. So you can see here in the past, they've exceeded it. They probably had some really, really bad I&I back in 2019. They had a blip here the most recently, May of 2021. And then they've been kind of like slowly hovering just below that planning limit, but still safely below it. On the right here, you'll notice that there's no data since November of 2022. The EPA is pretty slow at getting that data and getting it updated in this portal. So don't think that you just had no flow those months. Okay, so there's many different methods for testing your wastewater collection system. Here's a quick list here. I'll go in more detail on each one on the next slides. Okay, so flow monitoring is if you know and you've got a vulnerable section of pipe, an older pipe, or you kind of got an issue there, we can quantify how much flow. So what something you could do is go in January, February, in a lower flow, a dry month, and let's get that average data when we're not raining. And then when we get to now, when we're looking into the wet spring and summer months, you'll want to have monitoring in there to see like what's the peak, like how bad is the issue. So this is a really good way to quantifying how much I&I specifically you have in certain portions of pipe. Another thing to think about is manhole inspections. So someone can visually open up a manhole, pull the lid off, and look in, and if there's water coming in from the cracks and stuff, so things to look at. Do you have cracks around the cover? Do we need to potentially replace that or put some sort of sealant in? Is there water coming from cracks in the side of the concrete or at those joints? Did they put that joint sealer in there? So you could do visual inspections and find direct problems in there. Okay, so smoke testing here, you can see smoke literally coming out of the ground. And what he's doing here is he's taking a machine, pumping smoke into the line, and then you hope that it comes out of the ground where there's breaks, sections in the line. It's one of the cheaper options. I'd recommend it if you kind of know you've got an area problem and you're planning on fixing it immediately. You can go ahead and like smoke that 1,000-foot of line, and it'll show you different cracks in the pipe. If a clean out to a home, if there's smoke coming out of a clean out, it can identify that. If you've got issues with your manhole, so if your manhole is not super sealed, there'll be a bunch of smoke coming out of it. And like I previously mentioned, it helps to identify cross connections between the storm and the sanitary. Okay, so dye testing, you see this like green gooey stuff from like that slime show on Nickelodeon when we were all kids. What you can do is you can put this non-toxic dye into like a groundwater system or stormwater, and if it appears in your sewer, so like let's just say I go over to this inlet in the road and I dump some of this dye into it, and it ends up a couple manholes down the street that's a sanitary manhole, well, this would show that there's a cross connection, and we'd want to go and fix that and figure out where it's connecting in that specific section of pipe. This is my personal favorite, and I think this is kind of the gold standard right now. A lot of people are using this. This is pipe inspection using CCTV, that's closed circuit television inspection. So what happens is a guy, he's above, sitting in a van on the ground surface, and he places a robot that has different video cameras on it, and it goes into the line. It measures the length of the line, it can tell you the slope, and it can go down and do visual inspection. So he's getting a real-time video data of the condition of the pipe. He can see cracks, where water's coming in. And I think a big benefit is the end user, we get a report for every section of the pipe, and we get the videos. So we don't only have to rely on his inspection. There's other stuff. I had my live show a few weeks ago with Matt, where you can put it through an AI program that can back check the inspection and do some QC there. Or you can have your engineer or anyone at Public Works go through and look at it themselves, and you don't have to rely on this technician. Okay, so how should all this tie into your master plan? I think part of the reason as an engineer why we like to use the CCTV data, sending that robot through the line, is because it's replayable and we can use it for many different things. So not only can we identify, hey, let's go ahead and fix this section of pipe, I can take that and look for other funding opportunities. So if there's a state-funded loan or grant program that you can get cheaper dollars to replace your lines, I think that that's really helpful having that data. Now the other stuff like the smoke testing, we can go in and find spots and fix those spots. We don't really have a lot of visuals and stuff like that to rely on exactly location of the problem. And I think one of the things we should be doing is when we identify these problems, we should be updating our master plan and looking at different line priorities. So weighing different things. So if this line has more flow than another, it would get a higher priority. Or if the line's older, it has a higher chance of breaking. And I think a lot of that is kind of what Matt talked about on the live show last week. So I go back and look at that if you wanted to see some detailed information how to set up your plan. Okay, so that's a lot of information. Big overview about how you could potentially see if you've got an issue from a planning perspective, some tools that you can use that might be able to identify where the problem is, and then think about how it's tied to your master plan. I really think you want to have a long 30-year lookout at this and not how can we fix just all these problems today, because it can get costly if you're not able to leverage some of these opportunities, these funding programs that Texas Water Board, USDA has, then you're missing out on opportunities for really bettering your community. Anyway, guys, thanks for coming on the show and listening today. Really appreciate it. See you on the next one.